Hello, I'm Jonathan, and welcome to the Tamworth FC Social, a podcast all about Tamworth Football Club. Now, we love talking about the history of Tamworth FC on this podcast, so this time Brett and Graham are going to give us their all-time Lambs 11s. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at TFC Social Pod. You can click subscribe below this video and switch notifications on to be updated when we upload new episodes. Feels like this has been an episode we've wanted to do for a little while, chaps. So I'm keen to see who makes your all-time Tamworth 11s. We will start with you, Brett. If you could give us your 11 players. I presume you're doing a 4-4-2.
Yeah, 4-4-2. In goal, I've gone with Jazz Singh. I was originally going to go with Jose Vega, but given the run that Singh's been on this season and the way that he's performed throughout the seasons that we've had him and the records that he's broken, how could I have gone for anyone else really other than the man himself, Jazz Singh? Right back, I've gone for Richard Tate. I think a lot of the times he's forgotten about really as someone who went off after he left us to have a fantastic career, both in England and Scotland. He played for Cambridge. He was great for us when he was there. And then he ended up going off and having a couple of seasons in the SPL as well. So that, again, was a no-brainer for me. I've gone for Adi Smith and Matt Redmile in the middle of defence. Adi Smith come from Kidderminster, he was getting towards the end of his season, but what a stalwart he was for the club. I remember through the back end of one of the seasons, we were getting really hit by injuries, and he was playing in midfield for us. He was chipping in with goals. He was a real strong centre back. Could also play on the right as well. All round, he was a real solid defender. And then very similar to Matt Redmile, very much draws real strong similarities to Liam Dolman. He was you'd look at him and you'd think absolutely no way is this guy a footballer. We got him from Barnet, again, really, really solid. Obviously, he was an absolute unit. People just couldn't get past him. Read the game really well. Scored the winner against Hartlepool in the FA Cup. One of my many favourite memories following the club. And then left back, I've gone for Scott Stamps. Again, from Kidderminster. Again, solid defender. Had really strong footballing pedigree. Could get up and down the wing for an older guy. Great footballing head, and you could see that he was a very influential player in that team. So really, other than Richard Tate, the defence is all from the same kind of era. Smith, Redmile, Stamps was all within that same era. From within that era, we had a really good defence. We had Sakani Simpson, Lee Colkin. We had some real good defenders that year. And then midfield, then I've gone with my all-time favourite Tamworth player, Tris Whitman on the right-hand side. He could also play up front. When I first started going, he used to play up front. It was Taylor and Whitman up top. And then he was switched around a little bit, and then he moved out onto the right. He was much less prolific on the right, but God, was he rapid. He was really little. He was tricky to get around. He could get the ball down. He could knock it past players. And the pace that man had was just fantastic. I remember when I first started watching the club, I used to get really excited by Tris Whitman because I just thought he was really exciting. I think he come from Doncaster, so himself was quite a big signing as well. I remember he played really well against Farnborough away from home as well when we were really starting to look down the barrel of relegation, and he really turned it on in that game. I think he really saved us that season, that season in the conference under Cooper. I love Tris Whitman, he's my all-time favourite Tamworth player. And then in the middle, I've gone with Mark Cooper. Again, he could have been on the right-hand side, but I've gone with him in the middle. I didn't really see him play that many games. Graham would have seen him playing much more times than I would have in the old Southern League. But when I did see him play, obviously he was just a commander of his ship. He was brilliant. And as you can see why he'd gone on then to be a player manager and then obviously manager because, you could see as well, he'd clearly played in the Football League for the Blues and all those other teams, Bristol City that he played for. Great at free kicks, had a really good touch. And he's just a warrior. He just got in there. He just went for it. If he wanted that ball, he was getting it. If you had 11 Mark Coopers on that pitch, then, we would have been a lot higher up than what we were because he was a fantastic player. What an engine. And then also in the middle, I've gone with Carl Storer. He was only a kid when we had him. I think he was 18, 19, I think. But he'd come in. He'd obviously come from Bedworth. Obviously, at the time, we were probably the highest placed non-league club in this area. And again, very much like Mark Cooper, but probably 20 years younger. Fiery, had a great attitude. He had a temper on him as well. I remember he had a right temper, but he was again another battler in the midfield. And when you're down on it and you haven't got bags and bags of money and you need fighters in your team, that is absolutely what he was for a young man as well. And then my favourite ever memory of following Tamworth, the penalty against Bournemouth. I remember stepping up to take it, saying to my mate who was there, why is he taking the penalty? He don't take penalties, he ain't going to score this. And then he didn't, and I remember just going mad, going, I told you shouldn't have took it. And then obviously the follow-up came and he put it right and he put it in. And what a scenes that was that day. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, favourite memory of any Tamworth occasion. So, of course, he had to be in it. And on the left, I struggled with this, but I also felt like he absolutely deserved the place in the starting 11. So probably a bit out of position, although he could play on both wings, but he generally did play on the right anyway. Alex Rodman, fantastic player, had a great touch, obviously joined from Nuneaton, took him and Bradley Pritchard, and he worked really well with Bradley Pritchard together in the middle. But he was just fantastic. You know, he could get the ball down, he could play, he could make chances, he could finish chances, he could run at players. And then obviously when he'd left us, he went into the Football League as well, and he has a very good career in the Football League. He's retired a couple of years ago after playing for Bristol. But I remember watching him for Shrewsbury when they were in the League One playoff final. They were about to, they were obviously one game away from making it to the Championship. Really good player, one of my favourite Tamworth players. So again, probably a little bit out of position, but he could at times play on the left. Obviously, if this was a team actually playing, it would just make it have to cut in a little bit, but he'd be more than capable of doing that. Some other players that I admitted that I really struggled with deciding, but Marcus Ebden, fantastic player. Again, he was an old head in that team when we were really battling to stay up in the conference. He was a great player. Gareth Sheldon, I could have put him in there, but ultimately I think what I was really let down with by Gareth Sheldon was his decision to go and play for Kings Lynn because they offered him a professional contract. You know, he was based here. We just got promoted and won the league, but then he opted to go and play for Kings Lynn with a professional contract. You know, I think he made 7 appearances for them at the time, and well, that was the end of his career. He dotted around Bowl Swifts twice, went for other random, really low non-league sides that ultimately finished his season, his career at Polesworth. Which is a shame because he could have had another couple of really good seasons, I think, with us. And then up front, I've gone with Bob Taylor. You know, 19 goals in that first season for us. He didn't score any the second season, but I think by the second season, he had absolutely run out of everything. He ran out of legs, everything really, but he never lost his half a goal. And that goal he scored against Hereford from the halfway line, fantastic. It was a coup as well, of course. So we've gone from West Brom to Tamworth. And I've no doubt that year we weren't playing that well, that actually he was attracting people through the gates as well. I also played in the same team as Bob Taylor one year when we were playing in the supporters club, the supporters team against, I think we were playing against Halifax, and he'd long retired by that point, but he turned up in a van 15 minutes late, came on at half time, played about 20 minutes and then said he'd had enough and come off. That was a fun memory of Bob Taylor. And then the last one, I really struggled actually because I don't think we've had that many prolific goal scorers in my time of watching. We've had really good midfielders who've created chances and scored them themselves. But I think other than strikers, other than Bob Taylor, I don't think we've had that many at all. You know, we had Adam Cunnington, who I think scored like 50 penalties in one year. But I've gone with Taiwo Coutinho. I remember he just scored bags of goals to keep us up as well, and he looked like a talent. He was cut above a lot of other players in that league. And then he ultimately went over and played in America. Very good player. So that's my 11.
What a list. Some names we've mentioned on the podcast before, and I think a few maybe we haven't mentioned very often as well. Graham, what's your 11?
There's some in there that are similar to Brett, and some more in there that are some new names, but you know, going back a long while. In goal, I've gone for Jazz Singh. I think it was another tough one. I was going to go for Darren Acton. He was a very, very, very good keeper back in the day when we were getting promoted from what was then the Southern League to the conference. But I think obviously Jazz Singh, record-breaking goalkeeper, 2 promotions in a row. He's going to be staying on for another season. He's been here for I think 6-7 years now. So yeah, I think that was actually a bit of a no-brainer in the end. So right back, I kind of was in 2 minds who to put in here. I was going between A.D. Smith and somebody else. In the end, somebody else was a guy called Rob Warner, who played in the late 90s, early 2000s. So kind of through that period where we were gunning for promotion again from the Southern League to the conference. And I remember he played in the first season that we were in the conference as well. He might have gone into the second season as well, but I don't think he did. Always very, very assured right back. Kind of very similar, I'd say, almost to Mr. Consistent Matt Curley that we have now. And I think he probably could have gone on to play in the Football League, in my opinion, at the time. Very, very consistent player. But it was a tough one between him and A.D. Smith. But decided to go with Rob Warner Robert Warner in the end, as he was someone who was around for a number of years with Tamworth. And he took that step up from the Southern League. Centre back, so similar to Brett, I've gone with Matt Redmile. I think he was, absolutely rock solid in that conference team, and he did an absolutely brilliant job alongside Aaron Brown, I believe it was at the time. Really interesting side back then. The other centre back I've gone for is a guy called Dave Robinson, who was again around in that sort of early 2000s era where we got promoted and then we were in the conference, and he made that step up. He was a real battling centre back. Nothing ever got past him. Probably very similar, I suppose, to Jamie Willits in our era now. Really strong defender. Really difficult to say who would go into that slot. But yeah, Dave Robinson was always someone I thought was a really, really good player. And then left back, I've gone the same as Brett. I've gone Scott Stamps. Excellent player. Obviously someone who played in the Football League, and you could see it. And he brought a touch of class at left back at that time when we were in the conference. A really excellent player, to be perfectly honest. So on to the midfield. Centre midfielders first. I've gone with Mark Cooper. Absolute legend. So many times he got us out of situations with his free kicks and, just light up the crowd with what he did with that. And he was just somebody who, like Brett said, he'd just give absolutely everything. And he epitomised, what the team should be about and how we should get results. The other centre mid, I almost put Ben Milnes in here because I thought he's somebody who's shown that he's a game changer. He's a winner. But I've gone with Marcus Ebden because he was somebody he was a real touch of class when he came in. He played at a really, really decent level in the Football League, and he brought a bit of a touch of class to our midfield. And I remember him, very, very well during that era when we were in the conference, and he brought that stability. So in terms of wingers, so right midfield, I have gone with Alex Rodman. I was going between Alex Rodman and Tris Whitman. I went for Alex Rodman in the end just because he was somebody who went on to play in the Football League and have a really decent Football League career. Yeah, real excellent player back in the day for us, played for us in the National League North and then into the conference as well. And yeah, really, really good player. Left midfield, I've gone with Tony Hemmings. Now, he's probably one of my all-time favourite players. Wow, he was a real player. He's kind of an old-fashioned left winger, I would say. But the amount of goals he used to score and just, he'd run down the wing and he was just get the crowd going. Yeah, I don't know how you can compare him to today, but I just remember him scoring a hat-trick against Accrington, Stanley in the FA Trophy. That was brilliant, that. What a player he was. And then finally, strikers. I've gone with Mark Hallam. It's a little enlarged combination. I've gone with Mark Hallam and Warren Houghton. Those two together scored huge amounts of goals. I remember there was a point where Warren Houghton just couldn't stop scoring. Those two are absolute legends. Scored so many goals and were part of a very, very good team back then. That's my 11 for Tamworth.
Are there any honourable mentions from you both? I mean, one player that don't think either of you mentioned at all was Scott Barrow. I quite liked him when he was at Tamworth.
He was consistent. I think that's as far as it went, really. He was okay in a team that was okay. There were loads of other left backs. If you were going to talk about Scott Barrow, then you may as well talk about Dominic Langdon, like I said before, Sakani Simpson, Mickey Toohey, Michael Blackwood. And they're not all left backs, but they're left-sided players. So there's loads that I would probably include on that left-hand side over Scott Barrow.
What about, is there anyone in your lists you sort of think was unlucky to miss out?
Perhaps Dan Creaney, to be honest. He obviously had a hell of a season last season with scoring over 40 goals, and he scored a huge amount of goals for us over, the past 5 seasons. I think he's probably quite unlucky to miss out. Yeah, it was a bit of a close call, really, especially, well, for me, I think. But I think if I was going to put Mark Hallam in there, I had to put Warren Houghton in as well, really. I couldn't really put, just one of them in, because as a partnership, they were, terrific, really. And we probably never had partnership quite like that since.
Dave Bampton, he was very unlucky to miss out. But again, it depends on what kind of 11 you're going for. If you're going for an attacking 11 or a defensive 11, if you wanted to set up a bit more defensively, then yeah, you put Dave Bampton in there. In fact, actually, the way we ended up playing after Christmas this season, Dave Bampton kind of character would have fit perfectly within that squad. I would probably say Paul Perry also unlucky to miss out in his 2 stints that he had with us. Islin Christie, if you're going to go on goals scored, he scored a fair few goals for us the second time around.
I really wanted to put Tris Whitman in my team as well. I would have put him on the right, but I just went for Rodman just because of what he did afterwards as well, and where he went with his career. I almost was like, how can I maybe I could do like a 4-3-3. But then I thought, well, Whitman, Hallam and Warren Houghton would have just been a really... Well, actually, no, it could have worked, because you could have had Whitman on the right, Houghton on the left, Hallam in the middle. But yeah, that could have worked, actually. So in hindsight.
Bradley Pritchard, he also went off into the Football League, played for Charlton.
Yeah, you could have put Bradley Pritchard in there. He sometimes played as a striker, right, as well, a little bit, or kind of what would you call, like, almost like a Shikuna position.
Interesting to me, there's very few contemporary Tamworth players. Like, Jazz Singh is the only current Tamworth player that made your list. I know, Graham, you said Ben Mills was a consideration as well. I wonder, maybe it's just it's like human nature. I suppose you always hold your sort of formative years as a football fan maybe in higher regard, almost, even if what's going on at the moment is as good, perhaps.
I went on players that have provided me with my best memories when I first started watching the club. But then equally, during that time, we were 2 divisions higher than some of these players. Obviously, we're back in that division again now. It's just a different pedigree. And it's different kind of football as well, 20 years ago anyway, to what it is now. Different kind of task, different kind of pitches, different teams, different setup. Everything was just different. So the journey was different. It felt different. It's all relative, isn't it? You could have picked really the whole starting 11 and on paper this season because, well, we're saying it's the best season ever, so why isn't it the best team ever?
It's kind of those almost memories of going back a long time that you think, wow, these players did bring me a lot of happiness. Not taking any credit away from the current team, absolutely not. They're a team in their own right that deserve to be amongst the best. But I think it's just kind of like, just almost thinking when you're younger self, when you see it first start going down, and I suppose you kind of hold those years in a different regard.
We'll leave it there then for this episode of the Tamworth FC Social podcast. Thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media at TFC Social Pod. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking the subscribe button below this video and turning on video notifications. Until next time, goodbye.